What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to Talkin Sports with Jake. Hope we're all doing well. So I'm actually going to start with story time with Talkin Sports with Jake today. Usually don't start with this, but going to start with a story today. Just a crazy off-the-field issue with a athlete that broke very late last night. I think it was considered the morning after midnight when it broke. It's with Terry Arnold, the Detroit Lions cornerback. He was a first-round pick by the Lions 2 years ago. Was supposed to go into his third season with the NFL. I'm not sure how many games he'll be playing now. So this is the report on Terry Arnold. He has been arrested. He faces kidnapping and robbery charges. He's facing multiple felony charges after he was arrested Wednesday, so yesterday, in Tampa, Florida, in connection with a robbery and kidnapping in early February, so a few months ago. The Tampa police have arrested 600 individuals involved in a targeted armed robbery that took place a little bit after midnight on February 4th. Three men were pistol whipped and held at gunpoint and robbed. Terry Arnold was the primary conspirator. He was accused of coordinating and directing the co-defendants to lure three men to an apartment where the assault occurred. So he led this whole thing to lure three people to an apartment. These three people were threatened at gunpoint, kidnapped, and they were robbed. State Attorney's Office said they would like to file a pretrial motion to keep him in jail until trial. Jeez, this is really serious. These are my six co-defendants: Ariane Del Valle, Jasmine Randazzo, Lindell Hudson, Christian Williams, Boakai Hilton, and Freddie Lee Hughes III. Apparently, the incident began after personal property belonging to Terry Arnold and others was stolen on February 1st at an Airbnb that Terry Arnold had rented in Largo, Florida. He periodically stayed with these six individuals who are the co-defendants. Arnold, Hilton, Hughes, and somebody else reported property loss totaling more than $250,000 to the police department in Largo on February 3rd. According to the Tampa police, two of the three victims, this is coming from Terry and Arnold, which is through the Tampa police, in this kidnapping case, were responsible for the robbery. That's what Arnold thought. It later came out that they were not involved at all. So basically, Terry and Arnold thought these three people stole property from him and his six, I don't know, friends or whatever, totaling $250,000. So we decided to do this, and it came out that the three people were completely innocent. They were completely innocent. They had nothing to do with the robbery. Two of the co-defendants have pled guilty. The other four are being held without a bond. This is the statement from his agency. Oh, denying involvement in the allegations made. There's no evidence. Blah 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 blah. Stupid. Line said they're not commenting. Just what a joke. I read somewhere else that he had four other people lure these three people to his apartment and threaten them at gunpoint and kidnap them. And this was like broadcasted to Arnold and Hilton, who were in a car, like on their way to the apartment. When they got there, they continued to basically just threaten these people and threaten them at gunpoint and ended up robbing them, all because they thought that they stole from them when they didn't. Like, what a just horrendous situation. Terry Arnold from a first-round pick. By the way, he's also robbing the Lions by being one of the worst corners in the NFL these last 2 years since he's been drafted. And now he's facing potentially life in prison. I can't imagine he'll get that because he can. Simple as that. He's got a lot of money. He can afford a good lawyer. It's unfortunately how it works in this country. But he faces kidnapping and robbery charges for each. So he's in deep trouble. I would not expect to see Terry Arnold on the football field anytime soon. There's a lot of cases where, because people are rich and are athletes, they can get out of things that's very annoying and not fair and horrible. I'm not going to have this. This is horrible. And if all this is true, which is some pretty substantial evidence, he should never play another down in the NFL ever again. Got some NHL trades to report, and then we're going to go into some basketball. And that's going to be the show. The Washington Capitals make another big move. They acquire Alex Tuch From the Buffalo Sabres, they signed David Kampf and a third-round pick next year for Alex Tuch, and he signed an 8-year extension worth $10.5 million with the Washington Capitals to get him from the Buffalo Sabres. This is a big move for the Capitals, who I know Ovechkin is considering retiring. He hasn't made a decision yet. I'm about 85% positive he is going to come back. Well, these moves are this and Major and Kyron were made for one of two reasons. They're either they know he's retiring and they are trying to replace him in the aggregate with Jordan Kyrou, who's a really good guy who's capable of 30 goals, 75 points in his prime. Alex Tuchel is a similar player. He's going to be 30 last year, 33 goals and 66 points. Best year of his career was in 2023 with Buffalo. We had 36 goals and 79 points. He had 33 and 66 points last year. 36 goals, 67 points. The year before in Buffalo, he has had at least 30 goals in three of the last four seasons. In three of the last four seasons, he's had at least 66 points, had almost 80 points in 2023. Going to be 30. He's a really good player and one of the better top six wingers in hockey. And he gets a huge deal, but he heads to the Washington Capitals, maybe loading up for one more run of Ovechkin. Maybe they're expecting next year to be his last season. If Kyrou, Ovechkin, and Tuch, that's three 30-goal guys right there. Ovechkin, even at this point in his career, I think can probably give you 30-ish goals. That's how good that guy is. We know Tuch can. Jordan Kyrou obviously can. And so that's a really good trade for the Capitals. I mean, 8 for 10.5 is a lot for a guy who's going to be 30, but he is really good. And you don't give up much. David Kampf is maybe an average third or fourth line winger. Up there render in next year's draft, not even one that starts tomorrow. So that's a big deal for the Capitals. So Buffalo gives away Alex Tuch and don't get a whole lot back. They do extend Zach Benson 7 for 7.5. Zach Benson's a very good player. Last year, 13 goals and 43 points, best year of his career. Still only going to be 21 years old. And they lock him down. From a first round pick in 2023. They lock him down long term. But the Buffalo's been busy. They lose Bowen Byram, a stud defenseman. You get back a young player in that who's very good as well. In that trade, you do get the fourth pick in the draft, though. You can get a really good player for in that draft from Chicago. You flip Jordan Greenway and met him. Now unfortunately you weren't able to come to terms with Alex Tuch, so you trade him to Washington. You don't get a whole lot back, but you do lock up Zach Benson, who's only going to be 21 next year. It's still a good young team. We'll see what they do in free agency in the offseason for a young team that finally broke through, made the playoffs, and even won a playoff series. And we had one smaller trade. Panthers get Garnet Hathaway and a sixth-round pick in this year's draft from Philadelphia. They send a fifth-round pick and a fourth round next year to Philadelphia for Garnet Hathaway. Hathaway only had 3 points all season last year in 66 games for Philadelphia. Year before that had 10 goals and 21 points. So he might be washed. It's going to be 35 next year, but not long ago, this was a solid bomb six player. The Florida they've been very busy, giving up 3 first-round picks, including both their picks in this year's draft, number 9 and number 25. For Brady Tkachuk, who's an elite player, he's a 30-goal, 80-point-ish player. Obviously pairs with his brother Matthew Tkachuk. You added him, and then you flipped to one of your younger restricted free agents for a second rounder, which I thought was good value. And now you go out and add from that, don't give up a whole lot to get a potential, third or fourth line player in Garnet Hathaway. So Florida definitely is looking to bounce back after a tough year last year to back-to-back cups and get back into the to contention in the Eastern Conference. But moving on, before we get to basketball, the Mets have traded David Pearson to the Cubs for infield prospect Cole Mathis. Kind of hilarious how the Cubs just kicked the Mets' ass, and then Mets are like, do you just want Dave Pearson? They're like, sure, why not? Pearson overall was not a good pitcher for the Mets in 147 career games, 123 career starts, had a 4.3 ERA, 690 and 2/3 innings. His whip was 1.4, which is Very, very bad. He flashed his rookie year during the pandemic, but then followed up with a dud 21 and a 5.5 ERA and 15 starts, was injured a lot. 2022 was a little bit better. 28 games and 19 starts with a 3.8 ERA, finished that year strong. Then 2023 was bad. 27 games, 21 starts, ERA over 5. But 2024 is a breakout year. Has in 21 starts a 2.9 ERA. Then last year started out really well, makes the All-Star team. Back half of the year was really bad. Finishes a 4.2 ERA in over 30 starts, 168 and two-thirds. A lot of people thought maybe he'll bounce back. He had never thrown more than 121 innings in a season. There were 168. Maybe he ran out of gas, but this year has been brutal. 16 games, including 8 starts, ERA over 6 in 68 innings. 63 strikeouts and 30 walks, giving up 51 runs and 82 hits in 68 innings. He's just been horrendous. Started in the rotation, then they moved him to the bullpen. It was really bad. They had to put him back in the rotation because of all the injuries that they've had. But just overall, was not a good pitcher. Outside of like a year, outside of 2024 and the first half of 25 and some spurts here and there throughout his career, in 7 years with the Mets, he's been a relatively bad pitcher. A below average pitcher for sure. He goes to the Cubs, knowing the Mets, he'll have a 2.8 ERA the rest of the year with them. I don't even care anymore as a fan. They suck. Uh, Peterson, I think he's gonna be a free agent after the season. He wasn't good with the Mets. He's 30 years old. He's gonna be 31 in a couple of months. He's been horrendous. Just trade the rest of that horrible group and just get this regime out of here. The Mets are done. They've been done, but now they're very cooked. On to basketball. Lakers signed Robbie Avila, who was considered college basketball Jokic, kind of a joke, but he did play very well in the last couple of years in the tournament to an Exhibit 10 deal. First of all, I just want to explain what that is. I do want to explain what that is. So what that is, it's a 1 year deal. It's a non-guaranteed minimum salary. It guarantees a bonus that is $75,000 to just over $85,000, depending on the season. If they make the roster out of camp, then that contract ends up becoming a fully guaranteed 1 year deal, and they make the minimum league salary. If not, this gives them incentive to stay in the G League, because they can get the $75,000 to $85,000 bonus. It just, if a guy doesn't make a team, it's another, every guy's getting cut. It just, it makes the G League useful, and just, it makes it easier for these younger players who aren't super highly touted to try and work their way up. Even if they don't make the roster out of camp in their first season, they can go in the G League and get reps down there, and maybe eventually work their way back to a main roster. And teams can convert this to a two-way contract if they want. If they want that player on the team to once the season starts, teams are up to have up to 6 of these contracts on their books at any given time. The Exhibit 10s don't count against the salary cap. But good for Robbie Avila for getting a shot in the NBA. I'm not sure, he might be out of the league in a year, but I'm happy that he's getting an opportunity at least, because he's a fun player. And we had the NBA draft finished up last night. I'm going to get to some key second round picks in a few minutes, but 2 big trades happened. One wasn't as big, but I think it was a good move. The Memphis Grizzlies add Isaiah Stewart, Pistons big man. They send 3 second round picks to the Pistons. I think this is a very good trade for the Grizzlies. Stewart's only going to be 25 next year, going to year 7. He's an underrated player. He's got a lot of injury concerns. He's only played 70 games in a season once, or excuse me, twice, and only played 58 games last year. But he's one of the best backup centers in the league. Finished 7th and 6th man of the year voting this past year. He averaged 10 points and 5 rebounds. He shot 55% from the field, shot 33% from 3 on 2 threes attempts per game. So he doesn't stretch the floor too much. First career 34% three-point shooter on a little under 2 attempts, so he's not a complete liability from 3. He's a elite rebounder, one of the elite rim protectors and shot blockers in the game of basketball. This is a guy that you just love having on your team. Likes a little bit of impulse control, which, when he's gotten in some fights over the years. Remember the one he had with LeBron a few years ago. Got suspended a couple of times for his actions, but when he keeps his head on straight, this is a very impactful player for a team's second unit. And Memphis team has already lacked a lot of depth at the five these last 2 years, or ever since Marc Gasol was traded in 2019. They had some short-term fixes like Jonas Valanciunas and Steven Adams. They tried Zach Edey, drafting him in the top 10 2 years ago. That hasn't worked out. And now they obviously drafted Cameron Boozer in the top three, who I think will be a really good player if he reaches the ceiling. And Isaiah Stewart is a solid player that you add as well. For Detroit, just give him away. I don't know, but same time they do need to add, a legit primary ball handler, legit number two option next to Kate Cunningham. And if, moving off Stewart, if it gives you the money to do so, then it's going to be worth it. But they better go out and make a move and get a legit piece in there, because otherwise you'll have given away one of the best number two centers in the league, and just a really high energy guy that makes pretty much any team better. We had a big blockbuster between the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Charlotte Hornets. The Minnesota Timberwolves acquire LaMelo Ball and Josh Green from the Charlotte Hornets. The other way is Naz Reid is heading to the to the Charlotte Hornets from the Minnesota Timberwolves. Also heading to the Charlotte Hornets was first round pick swaps in 2028, 2029, and 2030. Three future second round picks, and an unprotected first round pick in 2033. At first glance, I thought, what is Charlotte doing? You finally started to build something. LaMelo had a really good year, then you just trade him away. The more I think about it, the more I do think this is actually a decent trade on both sides. I think it could end up being a win-win trade. For Minnesota, you really needed a primary ball handler who could be a complementary scoring option next to Anthony Edwards. You also need another playmaker. LaMelo Ball checks all those boxes. He's only going to be 25 years old. He does have injury concerns. Last year was only his second time in his career playing more than 70 games. The first time he had played more than 47 games in the season since 2022. Last year averaged 20 points and 7 assists. Shot 40% from the field, 36% from three. So he's a good player, only going to be 25. Per career, he averages 20 and 7 for his career. In 25, he was injured half the year, but he was healthy. He averaged 25 and 7 assists on 40 from the field and 33 from three. So he's been a streaky three-point shooter for his career. For the most part, is pretty solid from three. Last year, 36% from three on 10 attempts is pretty solid. He's a very good playmaker. He's a good scorer, pretty good three-point shooter, very good ball handler, could be a starting point guard. I think this is a really good fit for the Minnesota Timberwolves, something that they really needed. And for Charlotte, I think it's not a bad idea to sell high on him. He's a guy they've kind of sniffed around trading him. He wanted out the previous year. Just couldn't get anything for him because he was hurt. He had some off-the-court stuff. I think selling high actually isn't a bad idea. Josh Green also goes to Minnesota. He's not a terrible player. He is a 38% three-point shooter for his career. Last year, shot 40% from three on 2.5 attempts a game. So he's a solid three-point shooter on your bench. Only going to be 26 minutes. So as him as well. He could possibly play the Dante DiVincenzo role. He's probably going to be injured most of the year. Towards Achilles in the first round of the playoffs against Denver this past season. And I think Naz Reid is going to be a really good fit in Charlotte. They needed another big, and Naz Reid's a really underrated player. Naz Reid this past year averaged 13 and 6, shot 45% from the field, 36% from three, on almost six attempts. He's a 37% three-point shooter for his career as a former six-man of the year. If I had to guess, he's going to start in Charlotte. He was in line to start in Minnesota after they traded away Julius Randle. This is a very good player, only going to be 27. He's under contract for 4 more years at a not terrible rate. Naz Reid is an underrated player, one of the best just bench players in the entire NBA. Forget that backup bigs. Maybe the best backup big in the league these last few years. Maybe one of the best bench players in all basketball. He's earned him to start. If you're Charlotte, this allows you could start him with Diabate or Kalkbrenner. One of those guys could come off the bench now. You just drafted a power forward in Hans Steinbach, 14th overall. You can ease him in now. And overall, Charlotte, I think actually is doing a good job as all season. You got a guard from Texas Tech at 18 as well, who I think will be pretty good. You also re-signed Kobe White, 3 years, 74 million. People forget this is a very good player, Kobe White. Very good scorer, good playmaker. So he's not as good as LaMelo Ball, but he's a little bit more reliable, and he's cheaper as well. He's going to make what 25-ish a year, a little bit under that on this deal. LaMelo makes a lot more than that. So you do save a bunch of money. You save a tiny bit of money by adding Naz Reid, sending out LaMelo, and even re-signing LaMelo Ball. Excuse me, re-signing Kobe White, sending out LaMelo Ball, and you have swap rights with Minnesota, 20 through 30. You add a pick, a first rounder, 7 years from now, which will way down the line. You add a couple of late round picks. So overall, I think this could be a win-win because Minnesota is definitely taking a gamble, although I think one that they needed to do. And if you're Charlotte, I think selling high on LaMelo is not a terrible move. I think Nasrub was a big pickup for them. And then to finish off, I'm going to go over my top five, second round picks, my five favorite second round picks from this draft. Number five, I'm going to go with the New York Knicks, adding Tyler Nickel at 47, the wing from Vanderbilt. The Knicks are potentially going to lose Landry Shamet and Jose Alvarado. I believe at least one of those guys will come back. I hope they both come back as a fan. You see my house in my Brunson jersey if you watch the show for more than 2 seconds. Especially recently, you know what my team is. And if you're not blind, you see my Knicks jersey. In fact, if you are blind, you probably even see my Knicks jersey at this point. But I do believe Tyler Nichols is a can be a very solid player. Uh, they could again, if Francie goes a certain way, they could be end up in need of another wing behind OG Anunoby and behind Mikal Bridges. And they had that insurance with Tyler Nickel, who is a good player. I think can be a good player. Number four, my fourth favorite second round pick was Henry Bassar, big man. He goes 52nd to Atlanta. The Clippers originally drafted him. Atlanta moves up 5 spots to get him. I like Bassar. I think he'll be a solid number two big man. He can shoot for a guy his size. I think it's something that Atlanta needed. Atlanta did a really good job in this draft, addressing their needs. They needed a primary ball handler. That was an upgrade over Dyson Daniels, and they get that with Kingston Clemens, who I think will be an absolute star in the NBA at the eighth overall pick. And they need another big, and they take one in Henry Bassar, 52nd overall, who I think will be a solid player in this league. You can possibly play him with Onyeka Okengwu. He'll probably play behind him. And you still have room to potentially add another guard to this roster, or add another big man to this roster. So I think Atlanta did a really good job on this draft, and that was a really intriguing pick. If you ask me, number three, I'm gonna go with Braden Smith, guard out of Purdue. He goes to Indiana. Indiana makes a deal with the Bulls to get 38, and they take Braden Smith. I like him. What I think he reminds me a lot of Tyler Kolak. Kolak around probably the last 2 years for my next. If you've watched the show, you've heard me say Tyler Kolak can play. He's a solid number two point guard in this league. He showed out when he got minutes throughout the regular season, sparingly this year. I think Breakfast is a very similar player. I think he'll be a very solid backup point guard. Halliburton's coming off a torn Achilles. He's had a rough recovery. He got shingles at one point. Then you have him and TJ McConnell, who's a really good player behind Halliburton. I think that was a really smart pick by the Indiana Pacers. Number two, I'm going to go with Malik Thomas, guard out of Arkansas. The Cavs, who trade 29 to the Kings. Kings took Alex Carabama out of UConn with that pick. They get 34, and they take Malik Thomas. Now, Cavs are kind of in a tough spot. I think they're pretty screwed in terms of that core. I think they missed their window. But Malik Thomas, I think, will be a very good guard in the NBA. I think he's a really solid point guard. And having him behind James Harden and behind Donovan Mitchell, I think is a big plus for the Cleveland Cavaliers. Number one, the Minnesota Timberwolves, using the third pick you got from Julius Randle from the Brooklyn Nets and taking Isaiah Evans, the wing out of Duke. I thought Isaiah Evans should have been a first-round pick. He was definitely a top 20 player in this class, if you ask me. He goes 33, one of the biggest steals of the draft, in my opinion. Really good shooter, can defend the wing. And again, Minnesota realizing Donovan DiVincenzo might not play this year. He's going to miss a lot of time. They need someone who can, play that role, that spot up shooter, that wing defender, and they have done a good job, taking care of that uh, with drafting Isaiah Evans with the third overall pick and even adding Josh Green in the LaMelo Ball trade. So I thought that was a really good pick and a really good value pick by the Minnesota Timberwolves. That's all I got for you guys today. Till next time, so long and have a great day.